So what happens when parents split up and do want to share parenting? Jan used to work full-time as a lawyer. Her husband worked part-time from home and looked after their young daughter. 5 years ago, they split up. Jan asked a family lawyer to process the divorce and broker parenting arrangements.
I was asking them to find a way for us to share the parenting of our daughter.
But her lawyers told her this would be a problem.
Because they said that the court would in no way accept equal parenting, then they had to seek residency on my behalf.
Glenn, the ex-husband, now approached his own lawyers.
Shared custody was never suggested at any point along the line. I mean, you know, I'm not an expert on family law. I followed the advice of professionals, and I was told to go for custody, that I should have custody. And that's what happens in cases like mine, where one parent's at home and the other one's at work. That's normal, and that's what I should go for. Very shortly after Jan moved out and solicitors got involved, things turned very, very hostile.
It was very clear that they were very combative. They were prepared to fight dirty, really. They tried to get me to say things about Glenn which just hadn't been an issue, that it wasn't necessary. It really wasn't necessary, and I was shocked. But as it goes on, you sort of get taken up in it, and you know, it did make things worse. It definitely made things worse. As a parent, the most scary thing that someone can tell you is that you're not going to be able to live with your child. And I had no intention of becoming a weekend mum. She's my daughter. I want to spend as much time as I can with her, and because Glenn and I were separated, I knew that it wasn't going to be every day, but I didn't want it to be less than half.
You know, you try and keep the emotions and all the turmoil away from the children, but I remember at one point thinking, I'm gonna lose her here, and going away to a room to cry, and she came in and she looked at me, 2 years old, she looked at me in the eyes and she said, "Oh, Daddy's crying," and she put her arms around me and said, "It's going to be all right, Daddy, it'll be all right, Daddy." And that's, for a 2-year-old child to see that and be saying those kind of things, they should never have to go through that. There's no need for her to go through that.
Glenn and Jan arrived at court. 3 months in the hands of family lawyers, and their relationship had become very acrimonious. Their original aim of shared parenting was now becoming a remote possibility.
I felt the weight of the whole legal establishment against me, and I didn't know how far they were prepared to go. What were they going to say about me?
But once inside this court, they made a last-ditch effort to suggest to the judge the possibility of sharing their daughter.
When it was put to her that we wanted to share residency of our daughter, she said, "I don't like orders like that. I don't like them." It was not something that she would consider. It was going to have to be a case that one of us would become the resident parent and the other would be a weekend parent.
Joint residence, where a child lives at both mum and dad's house, is not traditionally favoured by judges in this country.
Joint residence orders were pretty rare, but over the last 5 years, certainly in my experience, they are becoming more common. Joint residence orders, by definition, that implies a spirit and working of cooperation, because you're jointly responsible for something. And therefore I think there was a natural reluctance at the earlier stages to give a joint order where the parties were clearly so much at odds with one another.
Jan was now pregnant by her new partner and was indicating she would be spending more time at home. She believes this is what tipped the scales in her favour.
I was just expected to walk away into the shadows and become the weekend father, because fathers are providers, they're not carers as far as these people are concerned. She's more interested in my ex's new partner and what his business prospects were than she actually was in our child and our child's well-being. The word love was never mentioned. Never talked about how we actually physically and emotionally cared for our child on a day-to-day basis. It was all to do with money and property and work.
We all felt that if she were to be our judge, then the order would be in my favour. But even so, I left that room and vowed I'd never go back in.
Let's go.
It was either that night or the following day that Glenn and I agreed that we were going to share residency, and from that moment on all we did was agree terms.
We're going to have a holiday, aren't we? Hey? 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You lucky fella.
You can't throw the ball.
Jan sacked her solicitors. She and Glenn came to an agreement over their 2-year-old daughter.
I think if it actually gone to a full, the full final court hearing, it would have got, really nasty. I mean, the barrister warning me about that. He said, being no doubt, this is a war. If you go all the way, it's going to turn dirty. And what's that got to do with what's best for our daughter? Absolutely nothing. How does that help us work together like we work now for the next? I mean, she was 2 at the time. There's another sort of like 16 years of parenting to be done.
Glenn and Jan narrowly avoided the next legal stage. This involves both parents making statements in court on why each is better suited to look after their child than the other.
The process is fundamentally adversarial. That is our system. It can just accentuate the difficulties and exacerbate the problems that the parties have. People should be encouraged to try and resolve their differences over their children before the court process. Now, whether that be by them negotiating themselves, or by mediation, or by a court process which places more resources on conciliation at the earlier stage, or a combination of all of those, strikes me as the way forward.
Thank you for coming today.
Family mediation is where a counsellor helps separating couples to negotiate an agreement on how to share their children. At present, it's not widely used by the family law courts.
Most of the couples who come are already in a breakdown of the relationship stage. It's at that stage, I think, that mediation can be really effective. People are looking for a settlement, and they're well motivated at that stage. A lot of the formal aggro and conflict that comes through solicitors and so on hasn't in fact started. So the idea is to try and look for prevention rather than going down into a conflict and adversarial route.
In our experience, the whole sort of family court system, the lawyers, the process leading up to the court, I'd say none of it was in the best interest of our daughter because it created so much acrimony. It brought acrimony in places where there hadn't been any.
The real victims of the family court's failures are children. One teenager told us how years of court action had kept her from seeing her father and deeply affected her life.
I've always been a very big daddy's girl, and we spent a lot of time together, and as soon as he left I felt like there was something huge missing from my life.
Natalie, which is not her real name, is 17. She was 9 when her father left.
I remember not understanding why he wasn't there and being very confused as to why he wasn't still seeing us.
Natalie's father did want to see his daughter, but wasn't on good terms with his wife and was having difficulty maintaining contact. He applied to the court for access.
The process is unbelievable. You have to actually go through it in order to really be able to believe it. But they go into an investigation mode without, it seems to me, knowing what their objective is and knowing what they're trying to investigate. Because after all, there was no complaint that either parent was a bad parent or wasn't capable of looking after their children. So what were they investigating?